The first message came from the CI channel. Deployment failed. That wasn't unusual. Then another, and another. Within minutes, every pipeline was red. Slack filled up fast. Is Argo down? GitHub Actions stuck on deploy step. Seeing auth errors pushing images. I opened the latest run. Build passed. Tests passed. Failure happened at push. Authentication failed. I checked another repo. Same thing. Different service. Same failure. At that point, it was clear. Nothing new was getting deployed. Anywhere. We were running on AWS, EKS clusters in US East 1 and EU West 1, about 75 microservices. Traffic around 2.5K requests per second. Images were stored in Amazon ECR. CI/CD was GitHub Actions. Every merge triggered a build, then pushed images to ECR. Then Argo CD handled deployment into Kubernetes. Authentication was handled using an IAM role. Short-lived credentials. Everything automated. No manual logins. Monitoring stack included Prometheus, Grafana, and centralized logs. Pipelines were critical. If they stopped, nothing shipped. Initial symptoms. Users were not impacted. Applications were still running. No outages, no performance issues. But internally, everything was blocked. No new deployments. Hotfixes couldn't go out. Feature releases were stuck. CI pipelines failed consistently at the same step. Image push. Error messages were clear. Access denied. Token expired. But here's the confusing part. We were using short-lived tokens. They should refresh automatically. So why were they failing? First thought was AWS outage. We checked AWS status, all green. We tested manually. From a local machine, we could authenticate. So not a global issue. Next thought was IAM permissions. Maybe a policy change. We reviewed recent changes. Nothing. Then we looked at the pipeline logs more closely. Authentication step was failing before the push. Specifically, when requesting credentials. We checked the GitHub Actions configuration. It used OIDC to assume an IAM role. That role granted access to ECR. We tested the role manually. Worked fine. So the role itself was not broken. Now things started to feel inconsistent. Manual worked. Automated failed. We checked environment variables. Nothing unusual. Then we looked at the exact error message. Invalid identity token. That pointed to the OIDC flow. Now we shifted focus. GitHub was issuing a token. AWS was rejecting it. Why? We pulled one of the tokens from the logs, decoded it, and there it was. The expiration timestamp, already in the past. That didn't make sense. The token was being issued, already expired. Slack was getting tense. Can we bypass CI? Can we deploy manually? Hotfix needed for production bug. We had to decide. Do we patch around it or fix the root? We did both. Root cause. The issue traced back to a subtle dependency. Our CI pipeline relied on GitHub's OIDC provider to issue identity tokens. Those tokens had a short validity window. AWS trusted them to allow role assumption. But the system clock on our self-hosted runners was off. Not by much, about 6 minutes, but enough. When the runner requested a token, GitHub issued it with the correct timestamp. But from the runner's perspective, that token was already expired. So when it was sent to AWS, it was rejected. Invalid identity token. Why did this start suddenly? Because earlier that day, the runners were restarted. They came up without syncing time properly. NTP had not initialized correctly. Before the restart, clocks were fine. After the restart, they drifted. Everything else worked. Builds ran. Tests passed. But authentication, which depends on precise time, failed. Mitigation and recovery. First step was immediate workaround. We temporarily switched critical deployments to manual authentication, used AWS CLI with valid credentials, pushed images directly, unblocked urgent fixes. Then we fixed the root issue, restarted the time synchronization service on the runners, forced NTP sync, verified system clocks were accurate. Then we reran a pipeline. Authentication succeeded. Image push worked. Deployments resumed. We rolled the fix across all runners. Added monitoring for time drift, ensured NTP was enforced on startup. Full recovery took about 40 minutes. Most of that was identifying the issue. Post-mortem reflection. What failed was not AWS, not GitHub, not the pipeline logic. It was time. We assumed system clocks were always correct. We did not monitor drift. Detection was indirect. We saw deployment failures, not time synchronization issues. There were no alerts for clock skew, no validation step in the pipeline. We also relied heavily on automation, without fallback paths, which made the impact broader. Engineering lessons. time synchronization is a critical dependency, especially for authentication systems. Short-lived tokens require precise clocks. Even small drift can break everything. Self-hosted infrastructure needs baseline health checks, including time sync verification. Pipelines should fail fast with clear diagnostics, not generic authentication errors. And finally, always have a fallback path for critical operations. Automation is powerful, but when it breaks, you need a way through. In the end, nothing in the system changed, except time. And that was enough to stop everything.